Welcome back. First thing first, download the files needed for this lesson. As I said before, you can find the files in the video description. Today, we're diving into the fundamentals of CSS, the language used to style and lay out web pages. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. It is a style language used to describe the presentation of a document written in HTML or XML. With the help of CSS, we can control aspects such as colors, fonts, spacing, and the layout of elements on a web page. A major advantage of CSS is that it allows the separation of content from presentation. In other words, the HTML code contains the structure and content of the page, while the CSS code handles how this content is displayed. This makes the code cleaner and easier to maintain. I'm going to open the Lesson 2 folder in VS Code. Let's create a new file and call it buttons.html. Now let's create that minimal structure again. If you remember, I typed the exclamation mark and pressed the tab key. I'm going to create a button. I'll type button and press the tab key, and between the two tags I'll type Google. To write CSS, I will use the HTML style tag. The style tag will always be placed inside the head tags, although it can also be placed between the body tags anywhere in the document. However, this is not a common practice and should be avoided. Placing it inside the head tags ensures that styles are loaded and applied before the page content is displayed, which is beneficial for performance and visual appearance. Inside the style tags, I will write the CSS code, which will modify how the HTML elements appear. The CSS code will not be visible on the page, but we will see its effects immediately. In order to see what happens, I will open the live server. Just before the closing head tag, I'm going to type style and press the tab key. Now I will write a line of CSS code that will affect the button element. Button, curly braces, and between curly braces, color, colon, red, semicolon. When writing CSS code, we must use specific syntax rules, so we will discuss CSS syntax a bit. The button element is a CSS selector. Practically, it is the HTML element we target and whose appearance we will change. Inside the curly braces, we have the line, color, red, where color is a CSS property that tells the computer and browser what we are modifying the text color. And red is the value we assign to the property. The colon separates the property from the value, and the semicolon at the end indicates the end of a CSS declaration. Practically, this line, color red, is a CSS declaration consisting of a property plus the value assigned to the property. I'm going to type BGC and press the tab key to add a background color, and I will choose yellow. Yes, we can use the Emmet extension when writing CSS. I'm going to add one more CSS declaration. Font size, 26 pixels. Now we have a declaration block. This entire block of CSS code is a CSS rule. In the Open folder, there is a file which I will open using the live server extension because I want to explain to you very briefly how this interaction between HTML and CSS occurs. I'm going to right-click on the file name, domcssom.html, and I will select the option Open with Live Server. We are talking about the interaction between the document object model and CSS object model. The DOM is a tree representation of the structure of a web page. Each HTML element becomes a node in this tree. CSSOM is similar to the DOM, but represents the CSS styles applied to HTML elements. Modern browsers have a rendering engine that builds both the DOM and CSSOM, and these two models are combined to create a render tree, which is used to actually display the web page on the screen. There are over 300 different CSS properties and a huge number of different values and combinations of values, but not all property and value pairs are allowed. Each property has a specific list of allowed values, which you will gradually learn as you practice. Changing the appearance of HTML elements is done step by step, adding declaration after declaration, rule after rule in a certain order that you will learn through practice. In CSS, there are several color formats or modes that you can use to define the colors of elements. I added the color by writing the name of the color itself. The method of adding colors using predefined color names in CSS is called named colors. In addition to named colors, you can also use other methods to define colors in CSS. I will illustrate how we can change the color mode in VS Code, and we will switch to another color mode, which is much more precise. I click on the red square to display a small window from where I can choose another color mode, and by repeatedly clicking on the red bar at the top, we switch from one color mode to another: RGB mode, hexadecimal mode, HSL mode, HWB mode. Each of these modes has advantages and disadvantages depending on the context in which they are used. I will choose the RGB mode. In the RGB mode, each color is created by combining the three primary colors, red, green, and blue in different proportions. The maximum value is 255 and the minimum value is 0. For example, red will be 255, 0, 0. Green is 0, 255, 0. Blue is 0, 0, 255. Black is 0, 0, 0. And white is 255, 255, 255. I am almost certain that the large volume of information can be discouraging. You may feel overwhelmed at some point and rightly ask yourself, how will I manage to memorize all this information? There is no need to panic. There are some who promise that HTML and CSS can be learned in 30 minutes or 10 days. The truth is that, in general, it takes about 3 to 6 months, during which you need to practice at least 2 to 3 hours daily. In this tutorial, we will use many CSS properties repeatedly, and thus you will memorize a large part of them. Let's move forward and add 2 more buttons, one for Yahoo and one for Amazon. I'm going to show you how we can do this faster using a shortcut. I will place the cursor at the end of the line, press Ctrl+D twice, and thus I will add 2 more buttons. I'm going to change the text between the tags. And now we have 3 buttons that look exactly the same, something totally pointless that we will fix immediately. How do we differentiate them? I will add the class attribute, which we will use a lot. In HTML, you apply a class to an element, using the class attribute within the opening tag of the element. I hold down the Alt key and click here on each line, just before the closing angle bracket, within the opening tag of the button element. Add a space and write class equal, and between double quotes I'll write btn. In CSS, the class btn is commonly used to refer to buttons. It's a shorthand naming convention for button. I added a common class to the 3 buttons, and now I will add another class, this time specific to each button. btn Google. btn Yahoo. And btn Amazon. When we add multiple classes, they must be separated by a space. And now I can use these classes to style the 3 buttons. When we target an HTML element through a class, we will add a dot in front of the class name. We start with the .btn class, and because it is a common class to the 3 buttons, we will add common properties and values. I am going to delete the existing code. .btn, curly braces. Width, 110 pixels. Height, 40 pixels. Font family, Arial, sans serif. Font size, 18 pixels. Font weight, bold. Cursor, pointer. I have almost nothing to explain. All properties and values are self-explanatory. I added width and height, chose a font, set its size and thickness, and made the cursor change to a pointer. When the user hovers over the button element, the cursor changes to a pointer, indicating that the element is clickable. Well, now I will make the buttons look different, and for this, I will use the second class, which is specific to each button. .btn Google. Background color, gray. Color, number sign, FFF. Border, none. I don't want this button to have a border. The button tag has default styles. In fact, all HTML elements have predefined styles, defined by the browser's user agent style sheet. These default styles ensure that elements have a consistent appearance across different browsers. Most of the time, we will override these styles with our own custom styles. Border radius, 3 pixels. Because I want the button to have slightly rounded corners. Now, for the .btn Yahoo class, I'll add background color, number sign, FFF. Border color, number sign, 000. Border style, solid. Border width, 4 pixels. Color, purple. And finally, .btn Amazon. Background color, yellow. Color, number sign, 000. Border, none. Border radius, 22 pixels. Now if we look at the CSS code, we notice that for the Yahoo button, we have 3 properties that start with the word border. We could use a shorthand. This shorthand combines border color, border style, and border width into a single line like this. Border, 2 pixels, solid, number sign 000. We'll end the lesson here. In the next lesson, we will continue to style the 3 buttons so that in the end they look like this. Until then, stay motivated and keep learning.